Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and today we're going to be talking about Planetary, #1, from Warren Ellis and John Cassaday. That's right, everybody. Welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and today we're going to be talking about Planetary, issue #1 from Wildstorm Comics. This is one of my absolute favorite comic books of all time. We did an episode of Comics Revisited where we kind of went over our thoughts on the series as a whole, but I keep talking about this book, and now that there's this new Outsiders book that's really kind of acting as a direct sequel to this book, and that's kind of getting some people excited. I've had a lot of questions. A lot of people ask me, what is it exactly about Planetary? So I figured, let's go through the first issue. I asked you if you wanted me to. Y'all said yes. So here we go. We're going to go through Planetary #1, and I'm going to tell you why this is the start of one of my favorite comic books of all time. One of my favorite series of all time. No BS in there. But before we dive into this, we're going to dive into this. That's right. This is the Planetary preview. This came out a couple of months beforehand. It was attached to an issue of Gen 13, Gen 13, as well as C23, part of the Wildstorm universe that was published by Image Comics, as you can see right there and right there. But if you notice, there is no Image logo here on Planetary, so let's set the scene just a little bit. Wildstorm is Jim Lee's faction of Image Comics, and at the time that Planetary is being produced, Wildstorm is about to be sold to DC Comics. Now, this was kind of out of nowhere at the time. I remember when this news got announced, it was a real big deal. A lot of people kept thinking that all of Image Comics was going over to DC and that Spawn was going to be a DC book and all this kind of stuff. But that's not exactly what happened. It was just Wildstorm. It was just the stuff owned by Jim Lee, so it was Wildcats, Stormwatch, stuff like that. Speaking of Stormwatch, Warren Ellis had made a little bit of a name for himself over on Stormwatch, right? So he did a really great run on Stormwatch, game changed some stuff up. They rebooted that one, and it ran for a little bit of time, and then it molded and shifted into what would become the Authority. So the Authority and the Planetary, they both launched in 1999, and they launched when Wildstorm was now officially part of DC Comics. Not part of the continuity, not part of the DCU mainline, but its own separate brand within the outer umbrella of Warner Brothers and DC Comics, right? So that's why you see the difference in the logos. Warren Ellis had kind of got his start, doing little things here and there. I remember first seeing him on books like Excalibur and Hellstorm, and those were pretty decent and nifty. But his Stormwatch stuff was really cool, which I read the Stormwatch stuff after I read after I read The Authority. And The Authority is the #1 that really took most of us by surprise. Planetary, not so much at issue #1's release, but it did eventually become more of the favorite of fans than The Authority. It had a long extended run. It was 27 issues, if I'm remembering correctly, maybe 26. It was supposed to take only a few years. It was supposed to be bi-monthly, but there were a lot of delays on this book. It took 10 years to complete, but now it's all here, and such a great comic. So let's dive into this preview. And this preview is really good because each issue of Planetary, at least for the first year, they're all self-contained stories, but they all build on a narrative that builds up into a larger story that is being revealed throughout the course of this series. And it starts by just kind of giving us what a typical Planetary mission is going to be. So it kind of starts off with each issue is a mission. And what they're trying to do here, the basic premise of Planetary, is that this is a team of mystery archaeologists who are trying to discover the secret history of the 20th century. And that secret history is this idea that all of the fiction that we here on this reality read and enjoy, whether it's pulp heroes, Godzilla movies, horror movies, Vertigo comics, superhero comics, all of the fiction that we've absorbed that came about from the 20th century, it's all real. It all really happened, and Planetary are discovering these mysteries at the end of the 20th century. The idea of the turn of the century is a big idea that's part of Planetary and the Authority. The Authority has a character named Jenny Sparks, who is what is known as a century baby, a character that was born on January 1st, 1900, that is somehow a spirit of the century. This guy right here, Elijah Snow, we find out that he is also a century baby. He's been alive for almost 100 years. But let's just get into this. So for the preview story, what happens is there's this military general. He shows up into his little office, and Planetary are there. We get a quick display of who these characters are and what exactly they do, and it is absolutely fantastic. This is Jaquita Wagner. She has super speed, super strength. She plows right through this bodyguard, and then this guy she tells him, like, yo, step back. You know, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what's up. And then here's Elijah Snow. He shows up, and he's kind of a little bit of a bastard. You'll find out more about him in the actual issue number 1. There's the drummer. The drummer has the ability to talk to machines and kind of control them, and they're here to talk about David Payne. Now, David Payne is a character that is based on Bruce Banner, and that's something that we realize as we get through this. He was working on something called integral theory, which Warren Ellis, one of the things he does so well in the pages of Planetary is give us a lot of like new information, like new ideas in science and even metaphysics and stuff like that. That gets explored in the pages of Planetary. So that's really cool. But he's developing the idea of like a supercomputer that's also a bomb that somehow shifts and changes reality, so that they can like remove cities and people and countries and change reality. Like, so it's a computer bomb, and so they're about to test it. It's taking place in 1962. Another nice little touch about Planetary is that each story does take place in the time that it should. So Hulk debuted in 1962, ergo this story takes place in 1962. A little bit of details are changed. Instead of Rick Jones, it's this general who's based on General Ross, obviously. It's his wife who has a thing for the Bruce Banner type character, the avatar of Banner, and she has a thing for him. She runs out there during the bomb test. He goes to save her, and as he's hit in this quantum field or whatever, they don't really quite know what happens, but maybe he ran this design in his head and became something that would survive the bomb, and so he became a Hulk-type character. They don't show you much of the Hulk here, or this Hulk-type character, and then very quickly it just ends on the next page. And this is another thing that Warren Ellis does that some people don't like, and it happens in most of the issues of Planetary, that I actually do like, and that's the idea of a very quick ending, right? So they tell him, like, this dude became this monster. He couldn't change back. It took us 24 days to control it. They dug a 5-mile deep pit under the base. They burned it with a nuclear weapon, and they kept him down there without food or water, and he eventually died in 1983. And he says his wife had a little girl 6 months later. I've never seen her. And that's it. That's pretty much it. There's C-23. I've never read this book. I wonder if it's interesting. I'm sorry, I just noticed the glare. So hopefully we can manage through that. Anyway, now let's get into the actual first issue of Planetary, which is such a fantastic book. So this was like a nice little preview, you know, to kind of give you the vibe and the flavor and the taste of a Planetary story. And there's a really cool, if you really look into it, you can see all these different ideas of like fiction in the 20th century, giant dinosaurs and superheroes and monsters and cowboys, barbarians, aliens, monsters, zombies, like all kinds of neat stuff that they're going to be mining in the pages of Planetary. So let's crack open issue number 1. Now, the art is by John Cassaday, Warren Ellis on the writing, Laura Martin is on the coloring. There's an ad right there for The Authority. The paper is really, really nice on this book. It's actually a different paper. So this paper is super glossy, and that's why it was shining. This paper is a little bit more matted, but it still has some nice shine. So the paper quality is really solid. At the time, this book was $2.50. I picked this up off the shelf. I remember reading it. I absolutely Loved it, but it wasn't the first issue that really pulled me in. It was where the story goes and how it develops. But we open up with a story that takes place before that preview. Jaquita Wagner shows up at this diner, and at the diner is Elijah Snow, who's going to be one of our main characters throughout the series as it progresses. She's there to recruit him into Planetary. She's given him the whole spiel. You're going to get $1 million for the rest of your life. We'll burn all the records about your existence. We're going to wipe all that stuff clean. And in return, we want the exclusive use of you, your talents, your memories, and your experience. And there's this nice little bit. Warren Ellis characters are always very snarky and kind of bastardly. And he talks about the coffee in this place tasting like piss. And then the waitress shows up and says, anything for you, darling? And he's like, yeah, get her a coffee. So he decides he's going to go ahead and go along and go find what Planetary is. He's signing up, and he gets to their helicopter. He shows up at their site. They've given him unlimited room service. They've given him new clothes. They've given him a platinum card. And he's trying to just try to figure out what exactly is going on. Then Jaquita shows back up and says, well, we've got a job. And during the job, look at that Castlevania ad right there. She's explaining what the job's going to be. Well, they haven't explained the job yet, but he's having a bunch of different questions. And he's like, so who pays for all of this? She goes, it's the fourth man. Planetary's always a 3-person team, and there's always a fourth man, but they don't know who the fourth man is. The mystery of who the fourth man is something that gets built up in this series, and I'm not going to spoil it because it is a very shocking revelation as you get through this series. So he goes, what happened to the last third man before me? Well, tell you some other time when we've worked it out for ourselves. Then he comes in, he meets the drummer. He immediately doesn't really like this dude. He's got this kind of snarky attitude, but the drummer is very youthful, very sarcastic, and a little bit off his rocker is the idea. And he explains, nice little bit where he throws the soda pop bottle at him, and Elijah Snow just catches it. So we don't quite understand Elijah Snow's power set or his history or anything like that. There's a lot of mystery in this first issue, but they present a mission, and this mission will go on to define the course of the rest of this series. So the drummer explains that they have found a mountain that has a hidden entrance. The entrance is hidden by a hologram, and they did some look into it with some radar, sonar, whatever, and they discovered this like hidden structure. So they put this mountain range together and realized that this is the last known location of Doc Brass, Axel Brass, which is a character that is based on Doc Savage. So she gives a little bit of background on Doc Savage. Now, one of the reasons why maybe it took me a minute to kind of, and a few of my other friends, it took us a little bit longer to get into this series as opposed to Authority, is Authority kind of hits you strong and hard really fast. And this one, like, we weren't super familiar with Doc Savage. It wasn't really fiction that we grew up reading. So a lot of this was lost on me on my first and second read. But as the series progresses, you realize what they're very cleverly doing. Because, for instance, I didn't read this Hulk issue until well after I'd read issue number 1. In fact, I didn't read it until I'd got the trade paperback of the first volume because it had that in there. So she explains who Doc Brass is, which is basically Doc Savage. He disappeared in 1945. So they go onto this mission. Drummer stays behind. Jaquita, once again, displaying her strength. I love just the jump and then seeing the impact right there. The artwork is great, by the way. John Cassaday, I know that he's recently had some covers that caused a little bit of an uproar, a little bit of controversy, if you will. But his work here is so freaking solid. The line is confident, and there's great spotting of blacks, and it actually is moody. It works in black and white. The colors by Laura Martin are really solid. At this time, there's a lot of plasticky, Liquid Colors was a color house that did a lot of like plasticky, computer-generated coloring that looked kind of fake and merged a lot of stuff into orange and browns, but even at that time, though, I was a sucker for liquid color for some reason, but nowadays I go back and I appreciate more of a muted approach here. It's using some of those color choices that we do typically see in comics of the late 90s and early 2000s, but it's still popping. There are some moments that are a little dark, but they still feel atmospheric enough, and the line art is so freaking solid. One of the most amazing things is the simplicity of the line work, right? But then there's also like a little bit of a grit and a texture you'll see, like with the cave walls or even on faces. There's always great noirish type shadows right there. I'm pointing it out and you can't even see it because of the glare. Yeah, I got to rearrange these lights for the next video. Sorry I didn't do it for this one. So they find Axel Brass. They find this trophy room. They find Axel Brass, and he's there, and his like legs are atrophied. He's still alive. He's not aged. He's got his guns out, and he basically explains to him that there was this secret. The Negotiator is a really good movie, y'all. So there was this secret cabal, like of superheroes of the time. So you got characters that are based on Fu Manchu, characters that are based on Tarzan, characters based on The Shadow. He's based on Doc Savage. I don't really know what some of these other ones are, but they had already developed amongst themselves a computer, simple binary technology, and now they have upped the stakes and trying to save the world and end World War II. Lethal Weapon 4 is a better movie than people remember. I'm just telling you guys, come on. So this came out in 1999, so this is 25 years old now. And it still feels very sleek and modern and cool because it's playing with these like classic character tropes, but it's using cutting edge ideas and concepts in science fiction as well as real science that it still feels very relevant and contemporary even today. But they wind up developing a supercomputer, a quantum computer that's going to basically create a mini universe and run its calculations through the universe, right? And they find out that the universe is shaped, all of reality is shaped like a snowflake, and that's it right there. This image is very, very important for the course of this book. So I'm just going to tell you what Hark says here. This is the shape of reality. A theoretical snowflake existing in 196, 833-dimensional space. The snowflake rotates. Each element of the snowflake rotates. Each rotation describes an entirely new universe. The total number of rotations are equal to the number of atoms making up the Earth. Each rotation makes a new Earth. This is the multiverse. So their computer is creating a multiverse in order to run these quantum calculations. The brain will generate the snowflake, the vast spread of universes, and the brain will generate the snowflake. The brain is the computer. The vast spread of universes and allow each to decohere and vanish as the correct answer is approached. It therefore processes information and performs actions simultaneously. Incredible actions. So they try to figure out a way to end World War II and come about with the absolute best possible society. They turn the machine on, and one thing that they didn't realize was going to happen, and then Elijah Snow realizes that the whole room, this whole headquarters, is the computer. It's not just this lantern-looking thing that they turn on right there. The whole thing is this computer, and as the snowflake grow, universes spun into life. Their spans measured in seconds by our reckoning, but time moved differently in there. In each newborn universe, billions of years span out in those few seconds we perceived, and at the end of one of those few seconds, in the thinnest splinter of time, a group of people in a mountain hideaway looked across that gulf of realities at us, knowing that their universe was on the verge of decoherence and destruction, and went forth. So we have avatars of the Justice League: Superman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, Batman, Green Lantern, Flash, and Aquaman. Avatars of them, you can even think of more of them like the crime syndicate from Earth 3, but they see that their world's about to die. They jump to this universe, and a big battle ensues, and this is a thematic element on fiction over the course of the 20th century, how the pulp heroes would eventually give way to the superheroes, the golden pulp age into the silver age. So a big battle, and they all die except for Axel Brass, who can no longer move and now has to stay there because he can't turn this machine off, and he has to stay there now and guard. And he goes, he couldn't switch the brain off, so I couldn't leave it. I had to stay here, stay awake in case someone else comes through. I figured the year must be 1970 or thereabouts. How am I doing? Well, it's actually 1999. And then we turn, and then we wrap it up very, very quickly. Elijah Snow goes, well, yes, we found some crazy stuff, but I see 3 choppers. One for us, one for the medics. What's in the third? Not telling. And then Elijah Snow's like, well, did we get what we wanted? And Jaquita goes, I don't know, did we? A quantum computer built during World War II by a secret society of superhumans whom we didn't know existed, plus their hidden headquarters. we did okay. And then a mission statement for what this book is. It's a strange world. Let's keep it that way. Absolutely cool stuff. John Layman is the editor here. Bill O'Neill is the lettering. This is such a super solid, top-notch book. Guys, I'm so sorry for the glare. I noticed it throughout. I was trying to help out. I'll change these for the next video. But Planetary #1, one of my favorite comics. It seems like a small start. But knowing what the whole course of this series is, there is so much groundwork laid into this one simple story. So what is brilliant about this as a first issue is it introduces these three characters very succinctly, very cleanly. It's got amazing artwork. It builds the mystery of who Planetary is, who's behind Planetary, who is this fourth man, what exactly are they after, and then the cool concept of mining the pop culture, the popular fiction of the 20th century as if it's real, and then the crazy high concept sci-fi ideas, the quantum computer back in the 40s, the shape of the multiverse as a snowflake, the 196, 833 dimensional space, the rotations, creating new universes, the superhumans coming in, the big battle, and all this lays so much groundwork, not just in concept, not just in characters, but in subplots. There are things that happen here that dramatically affect the course of this entire series, and it's such a joy and a pleasure. So I hope I could sell you on this book. Planetary is amazing. If you get a chance, grab up the original issues. If you get a chance, grab trade paperbacks. I think the omnibus is still in print. I'm pretty sure the trades are out of print, but I've heard rumblings that there's going to be a compendium coming out soon. Hopefully that is the case. This book absolutely rocks. One of my favorite comics of all time. I would love to celebrate its 25th anniversary by going through pretty much every single issue of this amazing run. So if you want to see more Planetary, let me know. What did you think of Planetary? If you've read it, if you haven't read it, you need to get there and snatch this up for yourself. Anyway, thank you so much for checking out the video. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is Pop Culture Philosophers. We appreciate it. Keep on reading. Station. Pop, pop, boom.